Admiral Zextai's 12 eyes focused on the tactical display with growing unease. The holographic representation of the Sol system floated before him, marking the third failed expedition to the unremarkable yellow star in as many cycles. 3 separate armadas, each comprising hundreds of vessels and tens of thousands of warriors, had simply vanished without a trace. The bridge of the Galactic Confederation flagship Eternal Dominion hummed with nervous energy as junior officers exchanged worried glances. Nobody wanted to be the one to voice what they were all thinking. Perhaps the humans were far more dangerous than initial intelligence suggested. Status report, Communications Officer Vrel, Zextai commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had conquered 17 star systems. Sir, our deep space monitoring stations detected the departure of Fleet Commander Kortha's Armada approximately 47 standard days ago. Their last transmission indicated successful entry into the outer reaches of the Sol system. Since then, nothing. Zextai's mandibles clicked in frustration. The humans had only achieved faster-than-light travel 30 cycles ago, a mere blink of an eye in galactic terms. Their technology was primitive by Confederation standards, their ships small and, seemingly fragile. Yet somehow, they had managed to make 3 entire fleets disappear. The first disappearance had been dismissed as an equipment failure. The second raised eyebrows but was attributed to possible navigation errors near the system's asteroid belt. The third disappearance, however, demanded investigation. Bring up the human intelligence files, Zextai ordered. The main display shifted to show detailed scans of Earth and its surrounding space. The planet appeared blue and green, teeming with life but lacking any obvious military installations. A few space stations orbited the world, along with what appeared to be mining operations on their single moon. Nothing that should pose a threat to advanced alien technology. Their military appears limited to planetary defense, reported intelligence analyst Kefmar. Small patrol craft, basic energy weapons, primitive missile systems. Our scouts observed no capital ships or fleet formations. Then, explain to me how 3 of our most experienced fleet commanders simply vanished, Zextai growled. Science Officer Yiltak nervously adjusted his scanner array. Admiral, there is one anomaly we've detected. The humans appear to have an unusual number of what they call research stations scattered throughout their system. Far more than typical for a species at their technological level. Research stations? Zextai's interest peaked. Elaborate. 17 distinct facilities, each broadcasting on different frequencies. They claim to be studying everything from solar radiation to asteroid composition. Most are positioned at what humans call Lagrange points, gravitationally stable regions throughout their system. Show me their locations. The display updated, revealing the positions of the mysterious research stations. Zextai studied the pattern carefully. To most observers, they appeared randomly distributed. But his experienced military mind began to see something else entirely. These aren't research stations, he said slowly. Look at the positioning. They create overlapping fields of observation covering every possible approach vector to Earth. And these 3 clusters. He highlighted specific groupings with the claw. They're positioned exactly where our fleets would have passed through. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. Communications Officer Vrel's voice cracked slightly. Sir, are you suggesting these research stations are actually weapons platforms? Zextai finished. Cleverly disguised and perfectly positioned. But that still doesn't explain how they could destroy entire armadas without any energy signatures or debris fields. Yiltak cleared his throat nervously. Admiral, there's something else. We've been monitoring human communications, and they have a rather strange cultural phenomenon. They create what they call entertainment about fictional conflicts with alien species. In virtually every scenario, the aliens possess superior technology and numbers, yet the humans always find ways to win. Propaganda to boost morale, dismissed weapons officer Graknor. Primitive species often engage in such fantasies. Perhaps, Yiltak continued, but the strategies they depict are unsettling. They seem to have devoted considerable thought to asymmetric warfare against technologically superior opponents. Zextai leaned back in his command chair, his multiple arms drumming against the armrests. Something was deeply wrong here. 3 fleets didn't simply vanish without explanation. The humans had to be responsible, but how? Pull up the sensor data from the edge of their system, he commanded. I want to see exactly what happened to Fleet Commander Korth. The main display shifted to show long-range sensor recordings. The massive Xerillian Armada appeared at the edge of the Sol system right on schedule, 500 vessels strong. Their formation was textbook perfect, advancing in a standard conquest pattern that had proven successful across dozens of worlds. For the first few hours, everything proceeded normally. The fleet maintained communication protocols, conducted standard reconnaissance scans, and began the methodical advance toward the third planet. Then, as they passed the orbit of the system's outermost planet, the sensors registered a brief fluctuation in spacetime. There, Zextai pointed. What was that distortion? Yiltak enhanced the sensor data. It appears to be some kind of gravitational anomaly, sir. Very brief, lasting only 2.7 seconds. And, after that? The fleet continued on course. All ships reporting normal status. Communications remained clear. But what? Sir, the fleet's formation began to stretch. Subtly at first, then more pronounced. Ships that should have been maintaining perfect spacing started drifting apart. Zextai watched in growing horror as the sensor data played out. Over the course of 6 hours, the tight military formation gradually elongated into a loose string of vessels spread across thousands of kilometers. The ships continued transmitting routine status reports, their crews apparently unaware that anything was wrong. This is impossible, breathed Graknor. How could 500 ships lose formation integrity without anyone noticing? The answer came 12 hours later in the recording. One by one, starting with the lead vessels, the ships simply stopped transmitting. Not the violent, explosive signatures of weapons fire, but the quiet cessation of all electromagnetic output. As if they had simply been turned off. Replay that section, Zextai ordered, his voice tight with concentration. They watched again as ship after ship fell silent. The pattern was unmistakable now. Whatever was happening, it was methodical and deliberate. The vessels weren't being destroyed, they were being neutralized one by one in perfect sequence. Admiral, Kethmar's voice was barely a whisper. I'm detecting faint traces of the same gravitational anomalies near each ship just before it goes silent. Zextai stood abruptly, his massive frame casting shadows across the bridge. How many species in our records possess gravitational manipulation technology? 7, sir. But, all are either extinct or members of the Confederation. None are anywhere near this system. Then, the humans have developed something new. Something we've never encountered before. The implications were staggering. Gravitational manipulation was considered one of the highest forms of technology, requiring understanding of physics that most species didn't achieve until they'd been spacefaring for millennia. Yet these humans, with their mere 30 years among the stars, had somehow mastered it. Sir, Communications Officer Vrel spoke up hesitantly, there's one more thing. We've been monitoring human data networks, and there's been a significant spike in activity around something they call Project Lighthouse. What kind of project? The details are heavily encrypted, but the little we've managed to decode suggests it involves what they term gravitational lensing and spatial compression. The project appears to be coordinated from multiple locations throughout their system. Zextai felt a chill run down his spine. Spatial compression technology could theoretically allow objects to occupy the same space by folding reality itself. If the humans had weaponized such technology. How long until our own fleet reaches the Sol system, he asked. 18 standard hours, sir. Zextai stared at the tactical display, watching the icon representing his own armada of 800 ships advancing steadily toward Earth. For the first time in his military career, he wondered if he was leading his forces into a trap. Open a channel to all ship commanders, he ordered. We're changing our approach protocols. As the bridge crew scrambled to implement new orders, Zextai couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to encounter something unprecedented. The humans had already proven they could make entire fleets vanish without a trace. What other surprises were waiting in the depths of space around their small, blue world? The countdown to contact continued, and, with each passing hour, the mystery of the missing armadas seemed to grow deeper. Whatever the humans had done to 3 separate fleets, Zextai was determined to uncover the truth, assuming his own ships didn't simply vanish like all the others. In the depths of space, Earth hung like a small blue marble, seemingly innocent and defenseless. But Admiral Zextai was beginning to suspect that appearances could be very, very deceiving. Dr. Elena Vasquez adjusted her coffee cup as she reviewed the latest sensor readings from Deep Space Monitor Station 7. To any casual observer, she appeared to be just another research scientist studying cosmic radiation patterns. The truth was far more complex and infinitely more dangerous. "Contact bearing 27 Mark IV, announced Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chun from her position at the tracking console. 800 vessels, standard Xyrillian configuration." Elena nodded calmly while her fingers danced across the quantum encryption keyboard. Around the cramped station, 12 other personnel maintained the facade of conducting routine astronomical observations while secretly coordinating humanity's most ambitious defense network. "Lighthouse Control, this is Monitor 7, Elena spoke into her headset. Package 4 is approaching the perimeter. ETA 14 hours to primary zone." The response crackled through her earpiece from a location hidden deep beneath the surface of Mars. "Copy, Monitor 7. All nodes are green and operational. You are cleared to begin Phase 1 protocols." Elena allowed herself a small smile. Admiral Zextai had been partially correct in his assessment. The 17 research stations were indeed weapons platforms. What he couldn't have known was that they were only the visible components of a defense network that spanned the entire solar system. The origins of Project Lighthouse stretched back nearly 20 years, to humanity's first tentative steps beyond their home world. Unlike most species, who developed interstellar capabilities gradually over centuries, humans had been forced to advance rapidly after detecting the massive Confederation fleet movements in nearby star systems. Early reconnaissance had revealed the brutal truth: Earth was located in what the galactic community considered an expansion zone, marked for conquest and colonization. Humanity had perhaps 50 years before the aliens arrived in force, and conventional military doctrine suggested they had no chance of survival. That's when Dr. Marcus Webb had proposed something unprecedented. Instead of trying to match alien technology directly, why not exploit the one advantage humans possessed: their location at the bottom of a gravity well? "Sarah, initiate gravitational field resonance across nodes 7 through 12, Elena commanded. "Resonance field active. Harmonic frequency locked at 1.7 terahertz." What the alien sensors couldn't detect was the network of gravitational field generators hidden throughout the asteroid belt, inside hollowed-out asteroids that appeared completely natural. Each generator was relatively small, incapable of affecting anything larger than a shuttle on its own. But, when networked together and synchronized, they created something unprecedented. Elena called out Dr. James Park from the physics station. "I'm detecting the same gravitational signatures we observed with the previous fleets. They're passing through the primary detection grid now." Elena pulled up the tactical display on her secondary monitor. The Xyrillian Armada appeared as a cloud of red dots advancing in perfect formation toward Earth. To them, space probably seemed completely normal. They had no way of knowing they were flying through an invisible maze of carefully tuned gravitational fields. The key to Project Lighthouse lay in a principle humans called gravitational lensing. Just as light could be bent and focused using mirrors and lenses, gravitational fields could be manipulated to bend spacetime itself. The alien fleets weren't being destroyed, they were being redirected. "Initiate Phase 2, Elena announced. Bring the dimensional fold generators online." 23 hours earlier, she had watched through similar instruments as Fleet Commander Kortha's Armada had met the same fate as its predecessors. The aliens advanced confidently through space that seemed empty and harmless, unaware that their path was being subtly altered by gravitational fields too weak for their sensors to detect. The process was elegant in its simplicity. As each ship passed through the carefully positioned gravity wells, its course was bent by mere fractions of a degree. Such tiny alterations were well within the normal variance of space travel and triggered no alarms. However, over the vast distances of interstellar space, those small changes accumulated dramatically. "Dimensional generators showing green across all nodes," reported Sarah. "Spatial compression field is stable." This was the truly revolutionary part of humanity's defense. While the gravitational lensing bent the aliens' course, the dimensional fold technology compressed the space behind them. From the aliens' perspective, they continued flying in a straight line toward Earth. In reality, they were being herded into an ever-tightening spiral that folded back on itself. Elena remembered the first test of the system 3 years ago, conducted on an unmanned asteroid. The rock had entered the field normally, following what its guidance systems insisted was a straight trajectory. 17 hours later, it had simply vanished, not destroyed, but translated into a pocket dimension created by folding space around itself. "The lead elements are approaching translation point alpha," James announced. "All readings nominal." Elena watched as the first alien ships reached the invisible boundary where Project Lighthouse's true purpose would be revealed. The gravitational fields that had been gently guiding their course suddenly intensified, creating a localized distortion in spacetime. The ships didn't explode or break apart, they simply ceased to exist in normal space. First Squadron has translated, Sarah reported with professional calm. No debris, no energy signatures. Clean translation. The alien vessels had been folded into what human physicists called a dimensional pocket, a space that existed adjacent to normal reality but remained completely inaccessible. The ships and their crews continued to exist, technically, but in a realm where they could never affect the material universe again. One by one, the Xyrillian Armada followed their lead ships into oblivion. From Admiral Zextai's perspective, monitoring from the edge of the system, his fleet would appear to be advancing normally until they simply stopped transmitting. No explosions, no battles, no distress calls, just silence. Elena, we're getting some unusual readings from the alien flagship, James called out. They're conducting deep space scans of the areas where their ships disappeared. Elena frowned. This was a new development. Previous alien commanders had seemed completely baffled by the disappearances, unable to detect any trace of what had happened to their fleets. Admiral Zextai, however, appeared to be more observant than his predecessors. What kind of scans? Full spectrum gravitational analysis. He's looking for the same anomalies we detected in our own sensor logs. Elena felt a chill of concern. If the aliens figured out the basic principles behind Project Lighthouse, they might be able to develop countermeasures. Worse, they might realize that Earth possessed far more advanced technology than anyone had suspected. Sarah, how many ships have we translated so far? 467. Approximately 330 remaining. And their formation? Still tight. No indication they're aware of the losses. This was the psychological aspect of Lighthouse that Elena found most disturbing. The dimensional translation process was designed to be undetectable from within the fleet itself. Ships that entered the pocket dimension continued to transmit routine status reports back to their commanders, but those transmissions were confined to the pocket space and never reached the material universe. From each crew's perspective, they were still advancing toward Earth as planned. They could communicate with the other ships that had been translated alongside them, maintaining the illusion that everything was proceeding normally. Only external observers could see the gradual disappearance of the fleet. Elena, the alien flagship is changing course, Sarah announced urgently. They're moving to a higher orbital position, trying to get a better sensor angle on the translation zones. Elena's fingers flew over her controls. Lighthouse Control, we have a problem. The enemy commander is conducting detailed analysis of our operation zones. Request permission to accelerate the timeline. The response came immediately. Permission granted. Bring the Express protocols online. Express protocols represented Project Lighthouse's emergency mode. Instead of the gradual, undetectable translation process they had been using, the system could create massive gravitational distortions capable of translating entire fleet formations simultaneously. The downside was that such dramatic spacetime manipulation would be impossible to hide. Express protocols activated, Sarah reported. Massive gravitational spike building across all remaining targets. Elena watched as the sensor readings climbed toward critical levels. In 30 seconds, the remaining 300 alien ships would experience a gravitational field strong enough to fold the space around them instantaneously. There would be no gradual disappearance this time, the entire remaining fleet would simply vanish in the blink of an eye. Translation event in 10 seconds, James announced. 9, 8, 7. On the main display, the cluster of red dots representing the alien armada pulsed ominously. Admiral Zextai was probably getting massive gravitational readings from his sensors right now, finally, understanding that his fleet was in mortal danger. 3, 2, 1. Translation complete. The display flickered, and the red dots vanished. 300 ships and 40,000 alien warriors had just been removed from normal spacetime, joining their translated comrades in a pocket dimension where they would remain for eternity. Lighthouse Control, this is Monitor 7, Elena reported. Package 4 has been fully processed. All targets successfully translated to dimensional storage. Excellent work, Monitor 7. Stand by for analysis of the flagship's reaction. Elena leaned back in her chair, her hands trembling slightly from the adrenaline. They had just made another entire alien armada disappear, but Admiral Zextai's probing scans suggested that humanity's secret might not remain hidden much longer. Elena, Sarah's voice carried a note of concern. The alien flagship isn't retreating. It's advancing toward the translation zone. Elena felt her stomach drop. Every previous alien commander had fled in terror after witnessing their fleet's disappearance. Admiral Zextai, however, appeared to be coming closer to investigate. "Get me General Harrison on the priority channel," Elena ordered. "We need to discuss Phase 3 protocols." Phase 3 was something they had hoped never to use: direct engagement with alien forces that had discovered the truth about Project Lighthouse. It would mean revealing humanity's true capabilities to the galaxy, with consequences none of them could fully predict. As Admiral Zextai's flagship advanced into the outer edges of the solar system, Elena realized that the easy victories were about to end. The next phase of humanity's defense would require them to show the galaxy exactly what they were capable of when cornered. The universe was about to learn why Earth had become a graveyard for alien armadas. Admiral Zextai stood alone on his bridge, surrounded by empty command stations and silent displays. His crew had been evacuated to the lower decks 3 hours ago, after the gravitational sensors had detected readings that should have been impossible. 800 ships, his entire armada, had vanished in an instant, leaving only his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, drifting through space that had become far more dangerous than anyone in the Galactic Confederation had ever imagined. "Computer, replay sensor data from the translation event," he commanded, his voice echoing in the empty bridge. The holographic display materialized before him, showing the moment when everything had changed. 1 second, his fleet had been advancing in perfect formation toward the small blue world. The next second, space itself had twisted into impossible geometries, creating gravitational distortions that registered beyond the upper limits of his instruments. When the distortion collapsed, 300 ships had simply ceased to exist. But Zextai had seen something else in that moment of chaos, something his younger officers had missed in their panic. For just an instant, as space folded back on itself, he had glimpsed what lay beyond normal reality. Pocket dimensions containing the wreckage of not just his fleet, but hundreds of other vessels spanning dozens of different civilizations. The humans hadn't just been defending themselves against recent Confederation expansion. They had been systematically eliminating every alien presence that approached their system for decades, possibly centuries. Earth wasn't a primitive world awaiting conquest, it was a fortress that had been consuming entire civilizations. "Sir?" The voice belonged to Communications Officer Vrel, transmitted from the ship's emergency command center deep within the vessel's armored core. "We're receiving a transmission from the human homeworld." Zextai's mandibles clicked in surprise. "Put it through." The display shifted to show a human female in what appeared to be a military uniform. She looked young by her species standards, with dark hair pulled back severely and eyes that held an intelligence Zextai found deeply unsettling. "Admiral Zextai," the human spoke in perfect Zerillian dialect. "I am General Sarah Harrison, Commander of Earth Defense Operations. I believe we need to talk." "You speak our language," Zextai observed, making no effort to hide his amazement. "We speak everyone's language, Admiral. We've had extensive time to study the crews of the vessels that have visited our system over the years. Your people are excellent teachers, even when they don't realize they're teaching." The implication hit Zextai like a physical blow. The humans hadn't just been capturing alien fleets, they had been interrogating the crews, learning everything about Confederation technology, military doctrine, and galactic politics. "What did you do with my fleet?" he demanded. General Harrison's expression remained neutral. "They exist in a stable pocket dimension adjacent to normal spacetime. They're unharmed, though I suspect they're quite confused about their current situation. They believe they're still advancing toward Earth. That's impossible. Dimensional manipulation requires technology that takes millennia to develop. For most species, yes. Humans, however, have certain advantages when it comes to rapid technological development." Harrison paused, as if considering how much to reveal. "Tell me, Admiral, what do you know about human cognitive architecture?" Zextai's confusion must have shown on his face, because Harrison continued without waiting for a response. "Most galactic species develop intelligence along predictable patterns. Logical, methodical, building understanding gradually over thousands of years. Humans are different. We evolved on a world where survival required rapid adaptation to changing conditions. Our brains are designed for intuitive leaps, creative problem solving, and synthesizing seemingly unrelated concepts into new paradigms. Meaning? Meaning we look at your dimensional physics textbooks and see possibilities you never imagined. Where you see stable, predictable equations, we see opportunities for manipulation and exploitation. Harrison gestured, and the display shifted to show a three-dimensional model of spacetime around the Sol system. Zextai gasped as he saw the true scope of what the humans had constructed. The research stations were merely the visible components of a vast network that stretched throughout the solar system, creating interlocking fields of gravitational manipulation that could bend reality itself. We call it Project Lighthouse, Harrison explained. 23 years of development, testing, and refinement. Your fleets weren't the first to disappear, Admiral. They were simply the most recent. The display updated to show dozens of pocket dimensions, each containing the remains of alien armadas. Zextai recognized vessel configurations from across the galaxy, Corinthian dreadnoughts, Velthan battlecruisers, even the distinctive bioships of the Zephyrian Collective. The Zephyrians vanished 60 years ago, Zextai whispered. The Confederation assumed they had migrated to another galaxy. They tried to establish a colony in our outer system, Harrison replied matter-of-factly. We were still testing early versions of the dimensional translation technology. The process wasn't as refined then, it took several weeks to fully process their fleet. Zextai felt his worldview crumbling. The Galactic Confederation had spent decades wondering about the fate of missing civilizations, never imagining they had all met the same fate at the hands of what everyone believed was a primitive species. Why, he asked. Why reveal this to me? Why not simply add my ship to your collection? Because you're different, Admiral. You figured out that something unusual was happening in our system. Your deep space scans actually detected traces of our gravitational field generators, something no one has managed before. That suggests a level of tactical intelligence we find interesting. Harrison stepped closer to her transmission pickup, her image becoming more prominent on the display. We've been monitoring Confederation communications for decades, Admiral. We know about the expansion protocols, the species classification systems, the plans for our sector of the galaxy. Earth has been marked for conquest and colonization for the better part of a century. Standard Confederation policy, Zextai admitted. Primitive worlds are integrated into the greater galactic community for their own protection and advancement. After their populations are relocated and their resources claimed, of course. Zextai had no response to that. It was, after all, exactly what Confederation expansion entailed. Here's what's going to happen, Harrison continued. You're going to return to Confederation space and deliver a message to your leadership. Earth is no longer considered a primitive world awaiting conquest. We are an independent civilization with defensive capabilities that exceed anything in your arsenal. They'll never believe it. The evidence of your technology will speak for itself. Harrison smiled, an expression that somehow managed to be both friendly and terrifying. We're going to give you a demonstration. The display shifted to show the edge of the Sol system, where the massive Confederation monitoring station Deepwatch maintained its vigil. The station was considered impregnable, protected by shields that could withstand direct hits from planetary bombardment weapons and armed with enough firepower to destroy small moons. As Zextai watched in horror, space around the station began to distort. Gravitational fields invisible to normal sensors reached out across millions of kilometers, gently grasping the enormous structure and beginning to fold the space around it. Stop, Zextai gasped. There are 12,000 personnel aboard that station. Who will be perfectly safe in dimensional storage, just like your fleet, Harrison replied calmly. Though I suspect the psychological impact of losing your most advanced monitoring facility will be significant. The station twisted out of normal space in a display of power that defied everything Zextai understood about physics. One moment, Deepwatch was there, broadcasting its standard monitoring signals. The next, it had simply ceased to exist in any meaningful sense. 12,000 of the Confederation's most experienced deep space personnel, Harrison observed. Along with all their intelligence data, technological specifications, and strategic planning materials. We'll take good care of them. Zextai slumped in his command chair, the full magnitude of Earth's capabilities finally sinking in. The humans weren't just defending themselves, they were demonstrating the ability to remove any target, anywhere in their local stellar region, without warning or resistance. What do you want? He asked quietly. Very simple. The Confederation will reclassify the Sol system as a protected zone. No further expansion fleets, no mining expeditions, no colonial assessment teams. In exchange, we won't demonstrate our capabilities on any core Confederation worlds. The threat was clear and absolute. If Earth could eliminate monitoring stations millions of kilometers away, they could presumably do the same to inhabited planets. And if the Confederation refuses? Harrison's smile became genuinely warm, which somehow made her words even more chilling. Admiral, we've had 23 years to study Confederation technology, tactics, and strategic doctrine. We know the location of every major world, the specifications of every ship class, and the deployment patterns of every fleet. She paused, letting the implications sink in. We also know that the average Confederation world has no defensive systems capable of detecting gravitational field manipulation until it's far too late. If we wanted to, we could make entire civilizations vanish without anyone understanding what happened to them. Zextai stared at the human general, finally, understanding the true scope of what Earth represented. They weren't just a defensive threat, they were potentially the most dangerous offensive force the galaxy had ever seen. You're offering us peace, he said slowly. We're offering you survival, Harrison corrected. The choice of what to do with that offer belongs to your leadership. The transmission ended, leaving Zextai alone with the knowledge that everything the Confederation thought it knew about the galaxy had just changed forever. Earth wasn't a primitive world to be conquered, it was a sleeping giant that had already demonstrated the ability to devour entire fleets without breaking a sweat. As his ship began the long journey back to Confederation space, Zextai wondered if his report would be believed, or if it would take the disappearance of entire star systems to convince the galaxy that humanity was far more dangerous than anyone had ever imagined. The age of easy conquest was over. The humans had just announced their presence to the galaxy, and the universe would never be the same. High Counselor Thrandek stared at Admiral Zextai's report for the fourth time, his ancient eyes struggling to process words that seemed to defy everything he knew about the galaxy. Around the circular chamber of the Galactic Confederation's ruling council, 12 other species representatives sat in stunned silence, each grappling with the implications of what they had just heard. You're asking us to believe, Counselor Vexterra finally spoke, her crystalline voice ringing with skepticism, that a primitive species we discovered only 30 cycles ago has developed technology capable of making entire fleets vanish into pocket dimensions? Admiral Zextai stood at the center of the chamber, his 12 eyes meeting each counselor's gaze in turn. I'm not asking you to believe anything, Counselor. I'm reporting what I witnessed. 800 ships, including my own flagship's escort fleet, translated out of normal space in the span of 7 seconds. Translated, scoffed Counselor Morgeth, his massive frame shifting with derision. A convenient term for destroyed beyond detection. Perhaps these humans simply possess advanced disintegration weapons. Then, explain the monitoring station, Zextai replied calmly. Deep Watch was eliminated from a distance of 3 million kilometers. No energy weapons, no missile strikes, no debris field. It simply ceased to exist in normal spacetime. High Counselor Thrandek raised one weathered hand for silence. At over 2,000 years old, he had witnessed the rise and fall of dozens of civilizations, but nothing in his experience compared to what Admiral Zextai was describing. Show us the sensor data again, he commanded. The chamber's main display activated, replaying the final moments of Deep Watch. The counselors watched as space itself seemed to fold around the massive station, creating gravitational distortions that registered beyond the theoretical limits of known physics. When the distortion collapsed, the station was simply gone. Our best scientists have analyzed this data extensively, reported Science Counselor Yilmoth. The gravitational manipulation demonstrated here requires understanding of dimensional mechanics that we ourselves don't fully possess. Which is impossible, Counselor Vexterra insisted. Species don't make technological leaps of this magnitude. Development follows predictable patterns across millions of years. Perhaps for species like us, Zextai replied quietly. But humans appear to think differently. General Harrison explained their cognitive architecture. They're designed for rapid adaptation and intuitive leaps. What takes us millennia to develop, they can achieve in decades through pure innovative thinking. High Counselor Thrandek leaned forward in his hovering chair. Tell us again about this General Harrison. Her exact words. Zextai closed his eyes, recalling every detail of the conversation that had changed his understanding of the galaxy. She said that humans look at our dimensional physics textbooks and see possibilities we never imagined. Where we see stable equations, they see opportunities for manipulation. And she claimed they've been studying captured alien crews for decades? Not just studying them, learning from them. She spoke our language perfectly, understood our military doctrine, and demonstrated detailed knowledge of Confederation expansion protocols. Zextai paused. She knew about classified operations that only the highest levels of our command structure should be aware of. Counselor Morgetha's massive fists clenched. If these humans have been interrogating our people, then they've committed acts of war against multiple Confederation species. We should mobilize the full fleet and reduce their world to cosmic dust. With what? Zextai asked bluntly. We've lost over 1,500 vessels in that system, including monitoring stations and scout fleets we didn't even know had been captured. Whatever defensive network they've constructed can apparently reach anywhere within several light-years of their homeworld. The chamber fell silent as the strategic implications sank in. The